Boldwood presents The Perfect Home, written by Natasha Boydell and read by Julie Maisie. The moral right of the author has been asserted. This performance is owned by Boldwood. The Westward Star, 23rd of July 2024. Police are investigating the disappearance of a 16-year-old girl from Westford. Poppy Sanderson was last seen by her friends at 11 p.m. on Saturday in the grounds of the Westford Park housing development where she lives. She didn't return home that night. Poppy is described as tall with long dark brown hair. She was wearing blue jeans and a cropped white t-shirt. Officers are appealing for anyone with information to get in touch. Westford Park is a new luxury development on the land of the former Westford Golf Club, which was sold 5 years ago. The 100 acres of grounds boast a country club, swimming pool and lake. Building of the 240 homes was completed in 2023. One resident, who asked not to be named, said, "Everyone is in shock. I can't believe that something like this could happen here. Westford Park is usually a friendly, close-knit community, but people seem to be turning on each other and tensions are really high. Yesterday, I actually saw 2 middle-aged women fighting in the street. There are all sorts of rumours flying about." The resident added, "The parents here seem to let their children roam around the grounds at all hours without any supervision. I just pray they find Poppy soon." Since Poppy disappeared, the hashtag #FindPoppy has gone viral on social media, and police have urged people not to speculate about her disappearance. Chief Inspector Jane Summers of Westford Police said, "Our priority is to ensure that Poppy returns home safely to her family, and I would urge anyone with information that may help our inquiries to contact us." Chapter 1. A year earlier. Evil. Avril Jones recoiled as the word appeared in her mind. Once, it would have had no effect on her. It would have been as innocuous as the next word in the dictionary, evince, eviscerate. But now it was loaded with meaning, a haunting and relentless reminder that no matter how hard she tried to escape, evil was determined to follow, even up the M1. Profoundly immoral and wicked. 4. Avril reread the crossword clue and gripped her pen tightly as she wrote the answer down. Then she turned the newspaper over so she couldn't see it anymore. She had lost her appetite for finishing the crossword, and it was making her feel car-sick anyway. There were 4 of them crammed into a small silver Mini Cooper, and yet the silence was deafening. Avril glanced anxiously at her children in the rearview mirror. Tom had his headphones on and was playing a game on his iPad, and Bethany was staring out of the window, her expression vacant, like someone had reached inside her and ripped out her soul. Avril looked away and fanned her face with the glossy brochure she was clutching in her left hand. The brochure promised buyers an exciting new lifestyle in a unique, luxurious setting. If anyone needed a new lifestyle right now, it was them, or a new life, come to think of it. Stuart was driving 7 miles per hour under the speed limit, his hands in the 10 and 2 position he'd been taught during driving lessons and had adhered to rigidly for the next 3 decades, as though someone might snatch his licence away if he deviated for even a second. Avril wondered if his hands might one day become permanently stuck in the position. She imagined him getting older and balder, his arms outstretched in front of him, and his fingers curled around an imaginary steering wheel, long after he had stopped driving. Sometimes she looked at him and wondered what she'd ever seen in him, if she'd ever truly loved him. She thought that she had, but somewhere along the way, the love had eroded, perhaps around the time they had stopped laughing, or listening, or considering one another. She hadn't considered him when she had spontaneously part-exchanged their sturdy, reliable Honda for the Silver Bullet, as she liked to call it. Stuart loathed the Mini Cooper. He thought it was overpriced and impractical, and he complained that he felt like he was driving a go-kart. Avril adored it because it was new and exciting. When she bought it, he had asked her if she was having a midlife crisis. She had responded, through gritted teeth, that if it was a midlife crisis she was having, she'd have left him for a hot young man and bought a Ferrari. Not that they could afford a Ferrari. They'd just spent all their savings and taken out an eye-watering mortgage on a 3-story townhouse so that they could enjoy an exciting new lifestyle in a unique, luxurious setting. They may be living off air for the foreseeable future, but as far as Avril was concerned, it was a price worth paying. Stuart was worried that they had borrowed too much money. He fretted about leaving their home in Hampshire, which was closer to his parents and his job in IT. He thought their new neighbours would be snobs. He said the service charge was extortionate and the country club an unnecessary extravagance. Avril disagreed with him on all counts. What was wrong with wanting to better their lives? To live among the wealthy, to swim in a beautiful pool every morning and then stroll down by the lake, watching kayakers bobbing about on the water. For their children to have more opportunities and the glorious freedom to explore that they could never have in the city. To breathe in fresh air every day. But these weren't the real reasons why they were moving, nor were they the reason why Stuart had reluctantly agreed to it. The real reason. It was unspoken between them, just like the 4-letter word that tormented her. Evil. Avril glanced in the mirror again and then uncharacteristically stretched out a hand and placed it on top of Stuart's. It was hot and clammy. He didn't enjoy long drives and he loathed motorways. But she was grateful to the M1 because it was taking them away from the past towards a better life. It was their chance to start again, to wipe the slate clean, rebuild their family and repair the damage that had been caused. She just hoped they weren't too late. She had to stay positive because she was the only one of them who was, so it was her job to buoy them all up. She had initiated this life-changing move, and she was determined to prove that it was the right decision. She closed her eyes and imagined having coffee with her new friends while the kids played with the neighbours' children, starting work in a new school where people didn't stare and whisper behind her back. She thought of Tom joining a local football team and making new buddies who knew him only for him and not for what his family had unwittingly become notorious for. Of Bethany, smiling, her beautiful face lighting up just like it used to, her daughter coming back to her again. And of laughing with Stuart and him turning to her to say, "You were right, Avril, this was the best bloody decision we ever made." Not that Stuart ever said bloody, but that wasn't the point. Things were going to be different at Westford Park. Avril was going to make bloody sure of it. "Grab that box over there, will you, Mickey?" Sandy Delahaye swept her hand across her sweaty brow and wiped it on her shorts as she watched her 16-year-old son lean down to pick up the box. "Where do you want it, Mum?" "In the kitchen, sweetheart." Mickey obediently carried the box inside, and Sandy paused for a moment to take in the house, its gleaming windows and white wooden porch. Inside it smelled of paint and varnish, and it was so spotlessly clean that they'd been able to start putting their crockery straight into the cupboards without even wiping them. Sandy sighed with pleasure. Claire emerged, holding their 4-year-old daughter Isla's hand. Isla's brown eyes were as wide as saucers, and she was bursting with excitement. Sandy wished that her son felt the same way, but that was just how it was with teenagers. He'd get over it, eventually. "Isla and I are going to explore the grounds," Claire said. "Want to come?" "Mummy, I want to go swimming," Isla said, hopping from foot to foot impatiently. Sandy smiled fondly at her daughter. "There'll be plenty of time for that, sweetheart. But I don't even know where your swimming costume is. You two go off adventuring and I'll get stuck into the unpacking." She watched Claire and Isla disappear down the gravel path, heading towards the lake. She should go inside and check on Mickey, start tackling the endless piles of boxes, but she couldn't resist standing a while longer with the sun beating down on her face. It felt like they were on holiday, and she couldn't quite believe that this was their life now, that they would be coming home to this house every day, barbecuing in the garden, swimming in the heated outdoor pool, and having dinner on the clubhouse terrace. Isla would start at the local primary school after the holidays, and when they went to see it, Sandy had fallen in love with the colourful displays and happy, smiling teachers. It was all perfect. Their friends had said they were mad when they told them that they were selling their beautiful house in Northampton and moving 8 miles away to Westford Park. "What on earth are you going to do there, out of the thick of it all?" one of them had asked. "Relax," Sandy had replied with a beatific smile. "Be free, be with nature." And their friends had rolled their eyes and said they'd be selling up again within a year. But Sandy was perfectly happy to prove them wrong. This, here, was paradise. She was going to walk every morning, listening to the birds' dawn chorus, and search for rabbits and hedgehogs in the fields and woodland. She was going to paint every day. She could feel her fingers itching, inspiration already building inside her. But first, unpacking. She walked through the open front door and located Mickey, rifling around in some boxes in the kitchen. "Where's the food, Mum? I'm starving." "There's some milk in the fridge and some cereal in that box over there. It'll have to do for now until we've unpacked a bit more." Mickey walked over to the fridge, his long limbs making the journey in a fraction of time. He was a handsome boy, and popular too. He looked so much like his father that sometimes Sandy had to look away and catch her breath, reminding herself that the likeness was in appearance only. Mickey was not his father. He was kind, thoughtful and good-natured. Today, though, he was sulking. He didn't want to move, but it was only a few miles away. Nothing needed to change for him. He'd still go to the same school, have the same girlfriend. Sandy thought about the other kids who would be living at Westford Park. She imagined tall, confident, privately educated girls and wondered if Mickey's head would turn. And so what if it did? He was only 16 and he had the rest of his life ahead of him. Lucky Mickey. Mickey devoured his cereal in seconds and threw his bowl carelessly into the sink. Sandy tried not to flinch at the clatter it made. "I'm going for a walk," he said, already pulling out his phone. "OK, enjoy yourself." With Mickey gone, the house was quiet and still. Sandy could faintly hear children laughing and shouting in the distance. She peered at the cereal bowl in the sink and remembered Mickey as a young boy, before the adolescent years set in. In those days, he'd wanted sugary cereal, Cocoa Pops and Frosties, not the plain Weetabix he favoured now. Other mothers might have become nostalgic in that moment, remembering the innocence of their child's early years. And Mickey had been such a fun, energetic little lad, always busy looking for something to climb up or hurtle down. They should have been happy memories, but they weren't. They were tarnished, and Sandy shook her head, trying to rid them from her mind. She was safe now, she reminded herself. They were all safe. Perhaps it was the upheaval of moving that had brought the past to the forefront of her mind again. She was exhausted from the last few days, overwhelmed by the prospect of all the unpacking they had to do. That was it, nothing more, and it would pass again soon. This was their new start, a place where history didn't belong and wasn't welcome. Sandy smiled as she heard Claire and Isla's voices, and moments later they appeared in the kitchen. Isla was clutching a lollipop. "They have free lollipops," she exclaimed ecstatically. "This is the best day ever." Sandy looked quizzically at Claire, who grinned. "We went to the boathouse, and the man who works there very kindly gave Isla a lolly." "Huh, I see. Did you enjoy exploring?" The question was aimed at Claire, but Isla interjected. "I loved it, Mummy. I love Westfield Park." "Westford Park, darling. Your new home." Sandy turned to Claire. "And you?" "It's great. It's really great." Claire came over and put her arm around Sandy. "I think we're going to be extremely happy here." "Tell that to Mickey." "Mickey will be fine." I know he will. Right, Claire was rolling up her sleeves. How about we put on a film for Isla so we can carry on unpacking? Where on earth is the box with the remote control? Sandy watched her wife rummage around in a couple of boxes before pulling out the remote control and waving it victoriously in the air. She was so lucky to have Claire, to have Mickey and Isla, to be able to afford to live here in the glorious grounds of Westford Park. Their friends were wrong, she thought determinedly. This was where they were meant to be. She could feel it in her bones. This would be the last time they moved. They would finally settle down here and build the happy life that they all deserved. She'd said it before, but this time she really meant it. And nothing or no one was going to stand in their way. She glanced over at the patio doors and felt the immediate urge to make sure they were locked. Just once. I'll check them just once. She frowned, yearning and frustration growing inside her. This wasn't meant to happen here. Things were supposed to be different. She stayed rooted to the spot, a statue frozen in a storm of indecision, an internal battle raging. You okay, love? Sandy tore her eyes away from the doors and looked at Claire, who was watching her curiously. Shame began to creep up inside her. She owed it to Claire to make things work at Westford Park, and Mickey and Isla too. Most of all, she owed it to herself. She clenched her fists and smiled. I'm great. Where shall we start? Lily Sanderson was hot and more than a little bothered. The removal men were supposed to have followed them to the new house, but after half an hour she hadn't seen hide nor hair of them. The sods had probably gone to McDonald's or the pub. She wished she was at the pub. Eric was outside, talking on his phone. His tanned legs were muscular from his after-work golf and squash sessions, and Lily cocked her head to the side and admired the way his salmon polo shirt fitted tightly over his broad shoulders. 17 years of marriage, and she still fancied the pants off her husband. How many people could say that? Not many, she bet. But where the hell were the removal men? Lily peered up the road looking for any signs of them. She started when she heard a noise behind her and turned to see her daughter, Poppy. Poppy, you made me jump, she said, putting one hand over her chest. Poppy didn't reply. With a huff, she lifted herself up onto the kitchen island and crossed one long leg over the other. She had inherited her father's beautiful skin and dark hair, and his stubbornness to boot. But her eyes were definitely Lily's. At least she could lay claim to the eyes. I'm bored, Poppy declared, rolling said eyes up to the sky. You're always bored. Go and find something to do. And how am I expected to do that when none of our things have arrived yet? Or when you've moved us into the arse end of nowhere, come to that? Language, Poppy. Arse isn't a swear word, Mother. Lily appraised her daughter. Why don't you go for a walk, see if you can find some friends? Because I'm not 6 years old, Mother. Lily tried not to wince at Poppy's use of the word mother. She wasn't fussy. She'd take Mum, Mummy, or even Ma. But it had been quite some time since she had been blessed with one of these terms of endearment from her daughter. Or any, come to think of it. To cheer Poppy up, she said, As we were driving in, I saw a boy about your age walking towards the lake. He was quite handsome. Oh, God! Poppy slapped her hand against her forehead. You are so embarrassing. Lily's patience, already tested after days of organising and packing, threw in the towel. For goodness sake, Poppy, stop complaining. We've just bought the most expensive house in this development. You'll have the best facilities in the area on your doorstep, and you'll be the envy of all your friends. What more exactly do you want? And you think that's what matters in life, do you? A posh house and a posh pool, that's the key to happiness. Throw money at it and it will all be fine. As long as everything looks shiny on the outside, who gives a shit what's going on inside? Language, Poppy! Lily wanted to empathise, but she couldn't really see what Poppy had to complain about. She was young, beautiful, popular and clever. She came from a stable, loving home. Lily had done everything she could to ensure that her daughter had the perfect life, one far better than she'd had growing up. She had shielded her from life's cruelties so that she could have an innocent, happy childhood. Poppy didn't know about the sacrifice that Lily had made for her, and she didn't need to know. But an occasional acknowledgement of her privilege might be nice. She was a teenage girl, though, ready to take on the world, to fight convention, to argue every little point. Lily had to admire her daughter's passion, if not her temper. She turned to the window again. These removal men better get here soon. Speaking of handsome, one of the removal men was quite fit. Very droll, Poppy. I'm serious. I might ask him out. Lily hid her wry smile. When she'd been a teenager, she'd fancied older men too, but that was another thing Poppy wouldn't be hearing about. Knock yourself out. Even better, do it in front of Daddy, because I'd really like to see his reaction to that. Father knows better than to say anything. Lily's head swiveled away from the window. And what's that supposed to mean? Poppy looked away. Nothing. Maybe I will go for that walk. Lily scrutinised her daughter. Poppy had once adored her father, but now she had a bee in her bonnet about everyone, him included, and Lily wasn't sure what he'd done this time to earn her disapproval. Most likely he refused to give her the money for a new handbag. Poppy hopped elegantly down from the kitchen island and flicked her long hair behind her shoulders. Call me when my stuff arrives. Lily watched her leave with a sinking heart. She fretted about Poppy going out alone. She worried about stalkers and serial killers. Most weekends she stayed up late so that she could go and pick her daughter up from evenings out, and Poppy complained that she was too controlling, that her friends were allowed out later and they all took Ubers home. Lily didn't care what Poppy's friends did. She cared about Poppy. But here, things would be different. This was a safe, secure community. Poppy could enjoy a bit more freedom without Lily breathing down her neck, and maybe that would help to mend the rift that had formed between them when Poppy turned 13 and decided that her parents, once her heroes, were her mortal enemies. But now she was nearly 16, and she wanted to rebel. Lily could hardly blame her. She'd been a tearaway at that age herself, and sometimes she marvelled at how she'd survived those years given the risks she'd taken. But her experience meant she also knew that life was full of danger, and she couldn't bear the thought of Poppy facing such peril. That was one of the reasons why they had moved to Westford Park. She craved the golden days, when children played out on the street without fear of abduction or being squashed by a speeding car, and neighbours looked out for each other. It was the life she had always dreamed of, white picket fences and the smell of apple pie. The heated pool and country club certainly helped. Speaking of neighbours, there was a car pulling up outside the house opposite. Lily gazed out of the window curiously as a woman emerged from a Mini Cooper and stretched her back before pulling the front seat forward. A minute later, 2 gangly children climbed out. Christ, how on earth did they all manage to fit inside that little car? Lily's eyes wandered gratefully to her Range Rover, parked in the driveway, and then back to the new arrivals. The husband had appeared and was standing by the car cleaning his glasses. The woman went to talk to him, gesturing at the boot. She was wearing a pretty Bowden dress, and Lily made a mental note of it, storing it up as a conversation starter for when they met. Perhaps they might share clothing catalogues or go shopping together once they got to know each other. Lily glowed at the prospect of making new friends at Westford Park. Then she felt the familiar twinge of anxiety and wondered if the woman would like her, or if she would see straight through her. Next, she appraised the 2 children. The boy was around 11 or 12, she guessed, but the girl looked a similar age to Poppy. Although she was tall, she was a slip of a thing, all pale skin and dark baggy clothes. She looked miserable too, and Lily guessed that, just like Poppy, This girl was sulking about being forced to move house and be separated from all her friends. Maybe she and Poppy could pal up. It would be nice for Poppy to have someone the same age living nearby. Perhaps they'd go to the same school and could get the bus home together. Poppy could even give the girl a makeover, get her out of those dowdy clothes, like in her favourite film, Clueless. Lily heard the rumbling of an engine and craned her neck to look down the street. Here was the lorry at last. She glanced at Eric, who was still on the phone, and felt a sudden urge to cry. This was not the new start she had planned, the one where Eric was finally present, came home on time every evening, and spent the weekend with his family. He couldn't even switch off his phone on moving day. Any second now, her husband would slink over with a remorseful expression and say that there was some work emergency or that a coveted last-minute slot had become available at the golf club. He'd probably return with a present for her, some flowers or an expensive bottle of wine that he'd picked up on the way home. And she would smile and kiss him and thank him for the thoughtful gesture. It was how they'd always done things, but she'd hoped it would be different here. Still, it was only day one. There was plenty of time for things to change. Lily would go shopping to get some sexy new underwear and maybe even send a naughty photo to Eric. That would get him off the golf course and into her arms. It was all she wanted, her husband in her arms. She pushed aside her habitual feeling of dread and went out to greet the removal men. Chapter 2. Avril took a deep breath and dived into the pool, relishing the shock as her body hit the cool water. She resurfaced and started doing a front crawl, swimming 10 lengths before stopping to catch her breath. Resting her arms on the side of the pool, she looked around. The poolside was quiet. They had been one of the first families to move into Westford Park, but by next summer, it would probably be rammed from dawn until dusk. By then, they would have been here a year, and it would really feel like home. Avril wondered how they would be. Would she and Stuart have healed the rift between them? Would Bethany be Bethany again? The prospect felt like a mirage, floating tantalizingly on the horizon, teasing her with its allure. But maybe it would happen. The sun and the swim had made her hopeful. She spotted a woman lying on a sun lounger reading a glossy magazine. She was wearing oversized sunglasses and a large sun hat, and her pink toenails gleamed in the sun. She was preened, polished, and beautiful, and Avril couldn't tear her eyes away. The woman looked up and saw Avril watching her, and Avril smiled shyly, embarrassed at having been caught staring. But the woman didn't seem offended by the attention. She got up elegantly and walked over, sitting down near Avril and dangling her legs in the turquoise water. "Christ, it's hot," she remarked. "Yes," Avril said. "I'm Lily." The woman extended a hand. Avril took it, smiling apologetically at her wet fingers. "Avril, when did you move?" 3 days ago. You?" "Same. Actually, I think you might live opposite us." They exchanged addresses, confirming that Lily was right, before moving on to other perfunctory topics, like where they had moved from and how many children they had. "Will your daughter be going to Weston Abbey?" Lily asked. "Oh, no," Avril replied, almost apologetic about the fact that their children wouldn't be attending the popular nearby private school. "Both kids are going to Westford High." Lily seemed disappointed. "That's a shame." "Yes." Avril's eyes drifted over Lily's perfect outfit, her highlighted hair and gleaming nail polish. She looked like she belonged at Westford Park, and for a moment Avril panicked. Had Stuart been right all along? Were they going to be the outsiders among the other residents who played tennis and golf and drank gin and tonics with breakfast? She was terrible at tennis, but she was willing to try the gins if that's what it took. But what about the kids? Had she taken them to a place where they'd be even more like fish out of water than they had been previously? All she wanted was for them to be happy, to make friends and to live a normal life. But suddenly she began to wonder if she'd made a terrible mistake by moving to Westford Park. She was surprised when Lily said, "Do you fancy a coffee?" "Oh, yes, I'd love that." Avril thought about the unpacking she still had to do and the fact that Bethany and Tom were at home alone, and then climbed out of the pool and wrapped herself in a towel. "Just give me 5 minutes to change. Take your time." Lily drifted back to her sunbed and picked up her magazine again, and Avril hurried towards the changing rooms, peeling off her costume and slipping her underwear and sundress on. After quickly towel-drying her hair and then stuffing her damp things into a bag, she dashed outside, not wanting to keep her potential new friend waiting. She waved at Lily, and they walked to the clubhouse together. They chose a seat inside, away from the glare of the sun, and ordered their drinks. Avril felt like a child on the first day of school, but Lily seemed perfectly at ease as she leaned back in her chair and smiled. "I love your sundress. Bowden?" Avril beamed. "Yes, I got it in the sale last year. We should introduce Poppy and your daughter. Bethany, is it?" "Yes, that's right, Bethany. She's at home at the moment with her brother. Poppy's an only child, and before you ask, yes, she acts like one, the spoiled little madam." Avril's eyes widened in surprise at how openly Lily had criticised her own daughter. She'd never said a bad word about Bethany to anyone, even after all the vile rumours and gossip. But then she saw the wry look on Lily's face and realised that she was teasing. "Takes after her father, of course," Lily continued proudly. "Beautiful, stubborn and strong-willed. No interest in studying for her GCSEs, even though she's perfectly capable. Just wants to shop, go out with her friends and flirt with boys. I bet Bethany's the same, right?" Bethany couldn't be any further from the same. Avril laughed nervously. "Bethany's very studious, actually, and she prefers staying in to going out." Lily raised her perfectly threaded eyebrows. "Really? Lucky you." "Tom, my 12-year-old, is very sociable," Avril added quickly, in case Lily thought they were oddballs. "He's sporty too, so he's looking forward to joining the school football team. Hopefully there will be some boys here at Westford Park for him to play with. I've seen a teenage boy hanging around a few times, but he's more Bethany and Poppy's age. Other than that, it seems to be younger children so far, but there are plenty more families still to move in. I think all the properties are sold now." "We were so lucky to get one," Avril gushed. "Yes, when I saw the house, I said to Eric, 'This is the one. I can just feel it.'" Avril got the distinct impression that Lily and Eric hadn't had to take out a hefty mortgage to buy their home, or perhaps any mortgage at all. "Do you work?" she asked Lily. Lily shook her head. "No, not anymore. How about you?" "I'm a teacher, part-time. I'll be starting at Bethany and Tom's school in September." Lily snorted. "Ha! I bet they're delighted about that." Avril grinned. "Tom's not bothered. I don't think Bethany's impressed at all." "So why did you decide to move so far away?" Avril was immediately on high alert, beads of sweat beginning to form, despite the air conditioning in the clubhouse. She had known that she would be asked this question, and she had rehearsed her answer enough times, but saying the words in her head was different to saying them out loud. She silently counted to 3 and forced a smile. "I was targeted on Facebook, would you believe it? An ad came up on my feed about Westford Park, and when I clicked on the link and downloaded the brochure, I was completely seduced. It's just such a unique setting, isn't it?" It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. Lily didn't need to know that, though. No one needed to know, because that was the whole point of fresh starts. Avril waited nervously for her reaction, fearing that Lily might see straight through her. "Oh, that's so funny. It's terrifying, isn't it, how well social media knows us all?" Avril exhaled. "Tell me about it. Anyway, I made Stuart come and have a look at it, and we were both completely bowled over. Another fib, but she was on a roll now. Same here, Lily said emphatically. It's exactly what Eric and I were looking for. By the way, did you know that Weston Abbey offers bursaries? It's a tremendous school, and if Bethany is as studious as you say, perhaps it's worth looking into. Oh, thank you, I will. Where are our coffees? Lily was looking around. This isn't a good start, is it? There's no point having a lovely clubhouse if the service is subpar. Avril had forgotten all about the coffees. She watched as Lily caught the eye of a terrified-looking girl and beckoned her over. We're still waiting for our coffees, Lily told the girl with an encouraging smile. The girl scuttled off, and Lily turned to Avril. Teething problems, I expect, with everything being so new. I'm sure they'll get everything shipshape in no time. Tell me, Avril, do you enjoy tennis? Oh, no, I'm terrible at tennis, sorry. Avril wasn't sure why she was apologising. It's easy once you get the hang of it. We should have lessons together. Oh, I'd love that, but you'd get fed up with me. I'll be nowhere near as good as you. Lily waved a hand dismissively. We're not training for Wimbledon, darling. It's just a social thing. It's so much more fun when you have company. Well, in that case, yes, please. I work Monday to Wednesday, though. I'll speak to the coach and see if I can book us in for weekly lessons on Friday mornings. That would be lovely. Avril beamed. It seemed that Lily was as keen to make friends as she was, and she had a daughter the same age as Bethany, too. Bethany needed some friends. It wasn't healthy for her to be on her own all the time. And if Poppy was as outgoing as her mother, she might even bring Bethany out of her shell again. Avril dreamed of the day when that happened. Already her earlier anxiety was beginning to ebb away, the mirage getting closer. What a great start to their new life. She couldn't wait to tell Stuart about it as soon as he got home. With the start, she realised that for the first time in months, she was looking forward to seeing her husband. The waitress arrived with their drinks, and Avril took a sip of her latte and smiled with satisfaction. When she looked at Lily, her new friend's eyes were staring across the room. You know, I think I recognise that couple over there. They're the Barringtons, I believe. What a coincidence. I wonder if they've bought a place too, or if they're just visiting. Will you excuse me a moment? Avril watched as Lily stood up and went over to greet the older couple, kissing them both on each cheek. Lily seemed so comfortable and at ease, like she didn't have a care in the world. Avril already had a mental image of Lily's husband and daughter before she'd even met them. She bet they looked like the families who appeared in the clothing catalogues she pored over whenever they came through the letterbox, boating types. Yet Lily had been warm and friendly, and Avril usually had a knack for sizing people up quickly. She sensed a comrade. After a few minutes, Lily came back over. They've bought one of the houses on the other side of the development. Apparently their son, who Eric plays golf with, told them about it. Well, it's just like a reunion here, isn't it? Avril was certain that there was no chance of bumping into anyone she knew at Westford Park, thank God, but she nodded in agreement. They continued making polite chit-chat until they had finished their coffees, and then Lily signed for the drinks and stood up to leave. Give me your number, she said to Avril, pulling out her phone. I'll call you about the tennis lessons. Feeling like a schoolgirl again who'd been asked to join a playground game, Avril read out her number and followed Lily out of the clubhouse. She immediately collided with a young child. Oh, goodness, I'm sorry, she said, looking around for the girl's parents. A moment later, a woman with long, wild, curly hair appeared, breathless. Isla, what have I told you about running off like that? The woman smiled apologetically at Avril. Sorry about that. Don't worry. Avril stretched out a hand. I'm Avril. We've just moved into Regal Close. The woman gripped Avril's hand tightly. Sandy, we're a couple of roads away from you. This is Isla. The little girl stared up at them with huge dark eyes. Well, Isla is just gorgeous. Lily beamed at the girl. Where are you two off to? We're on our way to the pool. Isla is desperate to have her first swim. Oh, the pool's fabulous. Avril here just took a dip. Enjoy yourselves. As she walked home with Lily, Avril was wistful. I kind of wish we'd moved when the children were younger, she confessed. They would have loved this so much at Isla's age. Oh, I know, but wasn't it hard work? Toddlers and tantrums and all that. Although grumpy teenagers aren't much better, are they? Avril wished that grumpy teenagers were the only thing she had to contend with when it came to Bethany. We really should introduce our girls, she told Lily. And please let Bethany like Poppy, she thought silently, or more to the point, let Poppy like Bethany. We must, and think about that bursary for the private school too. It might be too late, but you just never know. Anyway, bye for now. Lily kissed Avril on both cheeks and strode off, and Avril drifted dreamily into the house to find Tom on the sofa playing on his iPad. Have you moved at all since I left? She asked him, and received a grunt in response. Where's Bethany? Dunno. 5 more minutes on the screen, okay. Tom grunted again, and Avril went upstairs to check on Bethany. But when she got there, she looked around her daughter's empty bedroom with surprise. Bethany never went out, not anymore. Avril hurriedly took her phone from her pocket to call her daughter, but it rang out. With rising panic, she dashed back downstairs again. Tom, when did Bethany go out? Dunno. Avril snatched the iPad from her son. This is serious, Tom. When did she go out? I didn't even know she'd gone out, Mum. She never tells me anything. Avril tossed the iPad back onto the sofa and called Bethany again, but there was still no reply. Trying not to show her fear in front of Tom, she ran for the door. I'm going to go and look for her. If she comes back, call me. She raced back out of the house again and set off towards the lake, her heart banging against her chest. She shouldn't have left Bethany alone, not when she was so down. What had she been thinking? What if Bethany had run away? Or done something even worse? Visions of finding her daughter's lifeless body flooded her mind, and they were so unbearable that it made her dizzy. And then another unwelcome thought seeped into her mind. What if she's hurt someone? She started to jog and then to run, reaching the lake and following the path around it, calling Bethany's name over and over again. People were staring at her, and 1 or 2 asked if she needed help, but she ignored them. She was too frantic to explain what had happened, too worried to voice her fears aloud or call the police just in case. Even after everything that had happened, her instinct was to protect her daughter. Tears began to stream down her face as the realization set in that something very bad had happened. But who had it happened to? Who did she think she was? Going for a leisurely dip and having coffee with a potential new chum when her daughter was vulnerable? She was selfish, that's what she was, and she was filled with self-loathing. Resentment was flooding back too, though at Bethany, for making her feel this way in the first place. Their new life was already unravelling after just 3 days. This was not how she had imagined Westford Park. This was supposed to be a new start, a place where bad things didn't happen, where there was no place for evil. But now she was fearing the worst. The very, very worst. Chapter 3. Sandy beamed as she watched her daughter dipping her toe in the water. She felt like she was living in a dream that she never wanted to wake up from. How could Westford Park be so perfect? Surely there was a catch. But if there was, she hadn't found it yet. Maybe in winter, when the pool was closed and the sun wasn't warming her skin, she might feel differently, but she doubted it. She imagined a Christmas tree in the clubhouse, lights twinkling along the paths, and felt suddenly festive despite the heat. She heard footsteps and looked up to see Claire jogging towards her. Good run. Claire stopped in front of her and started stretching. Fabulous. I did 5 miles through the woods, around the lake a couple of times. I thought I might find you two here. Isla was desperate for a swim. We were waiting for you so she could go in properly. Claire looked down at her. You're not going in with her? No, not today. Maybe another time. Claire's eyes narrowed, and Sandy knew what she was thinking. She couldn't hide anything from Claire. They had no secrets between them, and that was just how Sandy liked it. Claire knew exactly why Sandy didn't want to go in the pool, and Sandy knew that her wife would gently bring it up later when the time was right. No pressure, no judgment. Think about it, love. You have nothing to be ashamed of. That was Claire, and that was why Sandy loved her. I'll go and get my costume in a second. Claire sat down by the side of the pool next to Sandy. I can't believe I've got to go back to work tomorrow. I feel like we're on holiday. Sandy smiled. I know what you mean, but we live here now. You can jog in the morning or swim in the evening, and we'll have the pool every weekend. I know, I still can't believe it. I've been thinking about my work too. Isla will be at school soon, and I really can't wait to start painting more regularly again. This place is so inspiring. Sandy sold prints and greeting cards of her work online. It didn't make a fortune, certainly not enough to pay the mortgage at a place like Westford Park, but she had slogged away for years and earned a nest egg before quitting her job in finance soon after Isla was born. And Claire was successful and supported Sandy's desire to work freelance around the children. Sandy had wanted to be around for her daughter, to be a better parent this time after she'd got it so wrong with Mickey when he was little. With Claire's support, she had set up her online shop, enrolled on a social media marketing course, and painted at weekends or whenever Isla napped. Over the years, she had built up a decent following and had some loyal customers. Claire was looking around, shielding her eyes from the sun. It's the perfect place to paint. I'm going to go down to the lake. I think I want to try some landscapes. Speaking of the lake, something very peculiar happened when I was out jogging. He's found us. Fear hit Sandy with the full force of a train, and her body was instantly on edge, ready to flee. Terror never really left her, even after all this time. It lay dormant, sometimes for months on end, but it was ready to activate at any second and at any given moment. Did you check the doors, the windows? She clenched her fists and looked at Claire. What do you mean? A woman was running around in tears, shouting. I thought maybe she'd lost her dog, but when I tried to help her, she completely ignored me. Sandy closed her eyes and exhaled as her fear began to ebb away again. It wasn't him, it was nothing to do with them. She felt foolish now for overreacting, because Claire would never have been so flippant about something that serious. She opened her eyes again and watched Isla sitting on the pool step, absorbing her innocence. What was she shouting? She kept screaming Bethany over and over again. Sandy frowned. Bethany didn't sound very much like a pet's name to her. What if it wasn't her dog? What if Bethany's a child? Claire's face paled. I didn't think of that. I tried to help her sons, I really did. Sandy's heart was already racing again, adrenaline beginning to course through her body. Claire didn't know what it felt like to have lost a child. The terror that gripped at your throat and made it impossible to breathe. Numbing shock competing with unbearable pain. She stood up. I'm going to see if I can help. Stay with Isla. Sandy, wait! Claire called, but Sandy was already running down the path away from the pool. She ran until she got a stitch, and eventually she had to stop, winded, to catch her breath. She looked around for any sign of an emergency, but everything was as peaceful and serene as it had been the day before when she had taken Isla for a scoot around the lake. Spotting the little wooden boathouse in the distance, she hurried towards it. Inside, a man was sitting behind the desk with his feet up, watching something on his phone. Sandy spied the bowl of sweets on the table and realised that this was probably where Isla had got the free lollipop from. The man looked up and smiled when he saw Sandy. Morning, what can I do for you? I heard there was a woman in distress and I came to see if I could help. The man frowned. What kind of distress? Apparently she was calling for someone. I thought maybe she'd lost her child. The man pocketed his phone and sprang up from his seat. He had longish hair and wore scruffy jeans, and Sandy guessed that he was probably in his late 30s. Something about him was familiar, but in her panic she couldn't put her finger on what. Had they met before? She didn't socialise in wide circles, so it seemed unlikely, but she didn't have time to figure it out, because the man had raced around the desk and was making his way for the door. "Where was this lady last seen?" he called behind him. I don't know," Sandy called back. "My wife told me about it a few minutes ago. She was out jogging and she saw this woman near the lake looking very upset." The man stopped as they reached the water. "All right, you go that way and I'll go this way. That'll give us a better chance of finding her. We'll meet round the other side." "OK." Sandy set off at a jog, scanning the path for any sign of the woman and wishing that Claire was with her. She'd know what to do. She was always calm in an emergency. Part of Sandy was annoyed with her wife for not doing more to help the woman, but she knew it was unfair. Claire had assumed it was nothing serious, most likely a boisterous dog who had run off chasing squirrels and would be back again in minutes. Claire was the sort of person who always saw the best in life. Sandy, however, usually saw the worst. She slowed down as she spotted a figure in the distance, crouched down and sobbing. As she got closer, she recognised her as the friendly, cheerful woman who had introduced herself outside the clubhouse less than an hour earlier. Taking a few deep breaths, Sandy approached the woman slowly, as one might do a terrified animal, and called out so as not to startle her. "Hi there, are you okay?" The woman looked up at Sandy with a tear-streaked face but didn't reply. "Can I help you? I want to help." "It's Bethany. It's my daughter." Sandy's heart constricted. She'd guessed correctly, but she took no pleasure in it. "It's Avril, isn't it? We met earlier by the clubhouse. I'm Sandy. When did you last see Bethany?" "I don't know." Avril was distraught, confused. "A couple of hours ago." "OK," Sandy said calmly. "And how old is Bethany?" "She's 15. Avril dissolved into tears again. "Could she be out for a walk? Perhaps she's gone to meet her friends." "She doesn't have any friends. This is all my fault. I should never have left her." Sandy crouched down and rubbed Avril's back. "We're going to find her, OK?" "It's all my fault," Avril repeated. Sandy stood up again. "I'm going to search for her. What does she look like?" "She's—" But Avril didn't finish her sentence. Both women heard footsteps and looked up to see the man from the boathouse running towards them from the other direction. "I hear your child is missing," he called. "Yes, Bethany. She's 15. She's not answering her phone and I can't find her anywhere." The man pointed behind him. "I just saw 2 teenagers on the fishing platform over there. It's not visible from the path. Maybe one of them is your daughter?" Avril scrambled to her feet. "Where?" "Follow me." Sandy and Avril ran after the man as he tore back up the main path, and then guided them down a narrow dirt track towards the water. "There," he pointed. Sandy followed his gaze and saw 2 girls sitting at the end of a rickety wooden platform, their legs dangling over the edge. They were throwing pebbles into the lake, and Sandy heard the splash as the stones hit the water. It all looked very peaceful. She turned to Avril and knew from the woman's relieved expression that one of them was Bethany. "Is it her?" the man asked. "Yes." Avril's voice was barely above a whisper. "It's her." The man puffed his cheeks and blew out air. "Oh, thank God for that. Everything okay then?" "Yes." Avril was staring at her daughter, her eyes fixed on Bethany's back. The man seemed to be waiting to be dismissed, and Sandy stepped in. "Thank you so much for your help. I don't know if we'd have found her if it wasn't for you." He grinned. "I know all the secret hiding places around here." Sandy felt another stirring of recognition, and she studied the man intently, trying to work out where she knew him from. But her mind was blank. Maybe he just had one of those faces that looked familiar. Or perhaps she'd seen him around Westford Park without even registering him properly. "You're a star. Sorry, what's your name?" The man extended a hand. "Steve." Sandy clasped his hand tightly. Well, thank you again, Steve. No problem. I'd best get back to the boathouse. He began to pick his way through the overgrown bushes back towards the main path, and Sandy turned to Avril. Are you okay? Yes. Avril seemed to finally register that she had company. I'm so sorry for all the fuss. Not at all. You have nothing to apologise for. You must think I'm crazy for getting into such a state. Sandy smiled. I don't think that at all. I have children. I know what it's like. Avril gazed at Bethany. She used to be such a happy child. I don't know what happened. Puberty, Sandy said knowingly. It happens to them all. She'll come back to you. I don't think she will. Avril sounded so bleak, and Sandy looked again at the two girls who were still unaware of their presence and wondered what had happened to rip this poor family apart. All we can do is love them and let them know we're here for them. But I wasn't there for her. That's the problem. I wasn't. What do you mean? Avril shook her head, as though realising she'd said too much to a stranger. Forget it, it doesn't matter. Thank you for your help. It's very kind of you. Are you okay? Shall I stay with you? No, I'm fine now. Thank you. Okay. Sandy was reluctant to leave, but she sensed that Avril wanted her to. Let me know if there's anything I can do, or if you ever want to talk. I'm Sandy. Sandy, yes, I remember. Bye then. With a last look at Avril, Sandy turned away. In the panic, she'd stayed calm and collected, but now that it was over, her mind was already hurtling back through the years to a time she wished she could forget. She could feel her fear as if it was yesterday, even though more than 10 years had passed since it happened. Waking up with bleary eyes and staggering into Mickey's room to find it empty. The first stirrings of dread as she ran from room to room calling his name, and then the cruel, undeniable realisation that he was gone. No parent should ever have to feel that pain. It was more acute and horrific than any physical injury, and she had known that if anything had happened to him, she would not survive it either. She had been one of the fortunate ones, thank God. She had got Mickey back within 24 hours, and then she had moved them far, far away, where no one could ever hurt them again.